Right, thanks so much for staying there. Now to the newspapers this morning. Ghanaian Times is reporting the Eid al-Adha celebrations yesterday. Let's live in peace, harmony. The president talking there. The Guide has this story. NDC sabotages a $2 billion Chinese deal, petitions IMF and World Bank. We'll take a look at that story. Churches must pay tax. Reverend Frimpong Manso there. Daily Graphic stays with that story. The Eid al-Adha celebration, the president and handshake with Sheikh Shaributu. Government will promote inclusive society, the president talking there. The Finder has the same story. Emulate sacrifices of our forebearers. President rallies Ghanaians for accelerated development. The BNFD says no politics in banking crisis investigation, and the Dufour sues Bank of Ghana on the Daily Graphic this morning. We'll take a look at these two stories. My guest this morning, Sami Gyamfi, is a member of the NDC's team. Sami, good morning.
Good morning, Bright.
Hope you are great.
By the grace of God.
And also contesting for the National Communications Officer. How's the campaign going?
We are making progress by God's grace. We're making progress.
All right, I'm grateful. And Eric Chum is also a member of the NPP team. He's also here. Good morning, too.
Good morning,
Hope
Bright.
you're doing great, too.
I'm doing fantastic.
Right. Thanks for your time this morning. Let's start the conversation with this one. The Ghanaian Times has this story. On page 27, the Bank of Ghana, Dufour story is on the front page of the Daily Graphic. We're told that Dr. Kwabena Dufour, a shareholder of the fund Unibank Ghana Limited, has initiated a legal action against the Bank of Ghana over the revocation of the license of the bank. Now, if you go to Times page 27, there's another story. Unibank shareholders demand KPMG report. We're told that shareholders of the defunct bank are demanding the official report by KPMG on the bank. The shareholders in a statement said they have been denied access to the report by the Bank of Ghana without any reason. It is unacceptable for the Bank of Ghana and KPMG to deny shareholders access to the report, even as material in the report has been widely discriminated to discredit Unibank and instigate public contempt and opprobrium against the bank. If you go to the Business and Financial Times, no politics in banking crisis investigations, and an analyst is saying or suggesting that investigations into the collapse of these banks must be free of any political interference. Mr. Francis Owusu-Champong is a risk management analyst. He is saying that when the central bank reluctantly cracks the whip by collapsing affected banks which were insolvent by all computation, suddenly people begin to read unnecessary political meanings. This is most regrettable, seeing that this situation would not be tolerated in any other jurisdiction. That's what he says. These are the three stories I wanted to take a look at. But the big one, the Bank of Ghana, there in court, Dr. Dufour is said to have taken that action. Eric, let me start a conversation with you. The efforts at cleaning the financial sector, some banks certainly not too happy. Unibank is one of them. They have every right to go to court. Does this come as a surprise?
Good morning once again. Good morning to Sami.
Good morning.
I think that I have to wish him well in this upcoming campaign.
Thank you.
It's always gratifying to see young people have clamor to also be part of our political dispensation. I think that we still need to encourage that so that the people within this generation are able to also contribute their quota. So I wish him well. And as he is the quest to become
the communications officer,
communications officer and all of those things, maybe he will calm down a little bit and eschew the propaganda that he normally does. But he's a fine young man. I'm sure that the NDC will do the needful and support him, because once you have a young communications officer, he will be there for a while. especially when they are going to be in opposition for quite a while. You need a young one to be able to run the course.
I see.
Anyway, that's said. It's also important to state that once the issue has now found its way into court, then it becomes a bit difficult to even start discussing the substance of the issues and the merits and the merits of whatever it is that Dr. Dufour has taken there. But I also know that a lot of the issues have actually come out in the public domain, and most people would make up their minds as to the decisions that have been taken by the Bank of Ghana, and by extension, the conviction that has been shown by the President to support actions of the Bank of Ghana to bring change into our banking sector. Now, once we start having these conversations, it's also imperative to look at it from the perspective of the people who I feel are most important in terms of being protected, and these are the depositors. So without going into details as to the reasons that are alluded to by the Bank of Ghana for revoking the license of Unibank, I think that would have to be at the forefront of every conversation that we have. Now, once it goes to court, what it does is that it actually opens up even more possibilities for us to find out exactly what led to the collapse of that particular bank. We run a democracy in this country, I think that is governed by the rule of law, and that he, as a citizen of this country, has every right to take the issue to court to have probably a final determination of the issues. So I would not begrudge him at all if he decides to do so, and of course he has done that. And then, of course, it gives an opportunity for even the courts themselves to make a decision in terms of if, well and truly, the BOG has breached any provisions whatsoever by revoking those licenses. So, but we know that in this particular country of ours, a lot of people, or some people, have even been affected. Some of them have actually been fatal for purportedly even taking 5,000 Ghana cedis loans and have been killed and shot at the firing squad. So we've made for me, I'm happy that we've made a lot of progress where today, when issues of this nature actually crop up, people are not sent to the firing squad and killed, but are given an opportunity to use the court system, which means that we can even pat ourselves as a country that we've come a long way. So I wish him all the best. I think that the decision of the BOG, as far as I'm concerned, was done in good faith. But if there's other indications that it wasn't, let's let them fight in court. And then I'm sure when the determination is made, then we can make some definitive statements on the issue.
On the issue, but quickly, now if you take a look at the Times newspaper on page 27, it talks about shareholders, and Mr. Dufour, Dr. Dufour is one of them, suggesting that KPMG failed to give them the report that they had gathered from the bank. They failed to give them access. In your own view, is that something you would consider right?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be a technical person in the sector. But, I mean, you see, I'm being a bit restrained. I want to restrain myself. I was expecting that he would have also taken the opportunity whilst he was asking for these reports to have answered some of the things or the allegations that have actually been leveled against it. But again, the issue has been taken to court, so I'm sure that the court is competent enough to actually be able to deal with the issues. So as to the requirements that KPMG provides them with the reports, I don't know. I'm sure that it goes through a certain process. I would sit here with a layman's opinion to say that maybe in the interest of natural justice, it's important that they have it. But now that the issues has been taken to court, I'm sure that this mischief will actually be cured.
All right. Grateful. Sami, so that's it. Dr. Dufour is in court, one of the shareholders. What do you make of it?
Right. First of all, a very good morning to all our cherished viewers across the world. You see, I fully associate myself with the action which has been taken by Dr. Dufour and the concerns which have been raised in his writ of summons. I believe that those are very tenable issues which goes to confirm my long-held opinion that the decision by the Bank of Ghana to collapse Unibank and the manner in which that was done was totally unfair, unjust, and arbitrary. It goes to confirm that long-held opinion of mine. Because you see, if you look at the circumstances surrounding this matter, it shows that some elements in this government and the Bank of Ghana determined to put Unibank out of business at all costs and without any justifiable cause. Right? It will interest you to note that as at 31st July 2017, Unibank was adjudged by the Bank of Ghana as the leading indigenous bank in Ghana, with a total paid capital of about 370 million Ghana cedis and a capital adequacy ratio of about 10.7. Now, somewhere September 2017, Unibank was part of the 3 indigenous banks who the Bank of Ghana told us were going to be able to meet the new minimum capital requirement of 400 million by December 2018. Now, it is therefore surprising that all of a sudden, after the Bank of Ghana itself had adjudged Unibank, as sound and all that, will seek to contradict their own position on Unibank relative to Unibank's financial position and its future prospects. Because it was after 31st July that the Banking Supervision Department of the Bank of Ghana carried out repeated audits about the financial position of Unibank. And if you look at the way and manner these repeated audits were conducted, which led to the downgrading of the assets of Unibank, their financial position, their capital adequacy ratio dropped from 10.7 to 8.2, then from 8.2 to 4.8, and in just a matter of 2-3 months, it dropped again to about negative 22%. Negative 22. If you look at that, totally strange as to why a bank can be adjudged as sound, in July 2017, and in less than 2 months down the line, officials of that same Bank of Ghana come up with very strange audit reports that the bank is no longer sound. The bank capital adequacy ratio keeps dropping from 10.7, 8.2 and all that. And if you look at the case which has been filed in court, Dr. Dufour argues that those repeated audits were done in contravention with the law, they were done in bad faith, and the facts relative to Unibank's financial position were misrepresented. One thing which struck me, which I believe is very, very pertinent in this discussion, has to do with government's own exposure to Unibank. Right, we were told in this country by the official administrator appointed by the Bank of Ghana, KPMG, that the government of Ghana and its allied institutions owe Unibank the sum of about 868 million Ghana cedis. I am told that as we speak now, that figure is around 1 billion Ghana cedis. Clearly, if government had paid that money, it would have improved, the balance sheet of Unibank and their capital position. That money was not, that debt has not been paid, and yet that indebtedness was totally disregarded in all the repeated audits by the Bank of Ghana did after July 31st. By the Bank of Ghana. And that is why they are raising all these objections. Now, if you put that aside, and you look at the fact that in spite of all these things, the Bank of Ghana still went ahead to put Unibank under administration with the reason that they intended to rehabilitate the bank within a period of 6 months and thereafter return it to its owners and management. First of all, the decision to put the bank on administration itself was untenable for me because it belied the very justification and the very rationale for the decision they are taking. The rationale was to rehabilitate the bank. Right, you cannot rehabilitate a bank when you put that bank on administration. Because what you do is that you press the panic button, and that leads to panic withdrawals by customers. And that will affect the fortunes of the bank. And that was what happened in this case.
You disagree with the Bank of Ghana too on that?
Yes, on that. Now, if you put that aside again, during the administration process, KPMG came out and told the government of Ghana that pay your indebtedness to Unibank and you will be able to save the bank. The government of Ghana replied the letter, specifically the finance minister, and promised to pay. Till date, that money has not been paid. So at the time the decision was taken to collapse Unibank, government's indebtedness to Unibank and the indebtedness of local contractors to Unibank, contractors whose indebtedness had been certified by interim payment certificates issued to them by the government of Ghana, had all not been paid. And all these things had been disregarded in the auditing of the financial position of Unibank. Now, is it not surprising, right, that when KPMG concluded their audit and they made some adverse findings against the bank, that those findings were not discussed with the shareholders and the directors against whom the findings had been made? Dr. Dofo and the shareholders of Unibank are today telling us that they were not given any opportunity to respond to those adverse findings. And we know there's a straight legal knowledge. The Odi Oterim Partem rule says you cannot judge a man on head, and that you must always strive as an arbiter to listen to the other side. They were not given any such opportunity to do that, and that for me is very, very, surprising.
These are matters to be determined by the court. Let me ask you this. Now, for instance, the various clients who perhaps have not been able to service their loans, including government, is it whose job is it to ensure that they pay?
If government owes a bank and the bank is in crisis, it is the responsibility of government to pay. Okay. In any case, this government promised local contractors that within the first 100 days, it was going to ensure that it pays them their money. Right. To date, it has not paid them, and that is why the banks are collapsing. So government is part of the problem. Okay. And I'm saying that if you have not paid the bank, you must not disregard that in considering the financial position of the bank. You understand? Because you cannot tell me that the government of Ghana is not credit worthy. And once you acknowledge that these, exposures have been validated and certificates have been issued to contractors relative to them, then it shows that the bank can recover if they are given the opportunity.
The government debt is paid.
Yes. Now, even apart from that, they were not given the opportunity to be heard on the adverse findings which had been made against them. The report is ready until date. The Bank of Ghana has not made available that supposed report to the shareholders and directors of Unibank. And that is something that I find mind-boggling. You have investigated a bank, you have issued a report. What is so secretive about that report that you are unwilling to give to the people who are at the helm or who own this bank? You understand? There cannot be any justification for that, because that will afford them the opportunity to know the issues which have been raised by KPMG and to address the issues head on. Now, instead of furnishing them with a report, I'm told that they requested for a copy of the report somewhere I think last month or so, and they have been declined, and no justifiable reasons have been given for that. The report, some way, somehow, has found its way into the media. And the content of the report is being disseminated all around the place. People's reputations are being butchered. People are being crucified in the court of public opinion, whereas they've not been given the opportunity for their side to be heard. And that, for me, worries me, because I feel that we should not be treating indigenous businessmen in that way. And, right, one thing that is
quickly,
very,
let me get Eric to react to this, to conclude, indigenous business.
One thing that is very instructive about this report is that you know that in the KPMG report, there was a disclaimer that KPMG itself is saying that they did not seek to authenticate and verify the claims in that supposed audit report. And so they could not vouch for the accuracy of the, statements and the facts in there. And so they cautioned that the report or the content of the report should not be communicated to any third party without their prior written consent. So how come that the Bank of Ghana, fully aware of this disclaimer, still released this report, and today this report is being discussed left, right, center in a manner which is very...
Is it official that the Bank of Ghana says it as a release?
They are the custodians of the reports. And
okay,
so
KPMG did the report.
Yes, and they gave it to them.
Ghana.
It was a confidential report. Okay. And so if the report has leaked, then it is proper to blame the Bank of Ghana for that. You know, if we are serious in this country, I will just make this concluding statement. The governor of the Bank of Ghana should not still be at post. I'm referring to Dr. Addison. Because we are here because of the regulatory failure of the Bank of Ghana under his leadership. We are here because of his incompetence. If you look at the case of Construction Bank, Sovereign Bank, and Beach Finance Capital, where we are told that the licenses of this bank have been revoked because they acquired their licenses through false pretenses. It will interest you to know that the one who actually bought those false pretenses and the one who actually signed the license for these banks was Dr. Addison himself. So you neglect to do your job, you fail to do due diligence, you issue licenses to banks, and at the end of the day, you come and tell us that, oh, they acquired the licenses through false pretenses, so I've cancelled their license. And that is going to come at a cost to the taxpayer. The taxpayer is paying a whooping 5.7 billion to resuscitate this collapsed bank. Okay. And we are doing so because of his incompetence, and yet people expect us to clap for him. I fully support this action, and I hope that the court will vindicate the truth and vindicate the position of the shareholders and Dr. Dufour.
You've raised a couple of issues dealing with indigenous banks, the fact that you think the Bank of Ghana has done something wrong. But let me take a quick, we want to come back. I'll get Eric to react to these things, and then we can pick next topic. Stay there. Welcome back. Now, let's get back to Eric. Eric, Sammy was raising quite a couple of issues. He's saying he disagrees with the Bank of Ghana on certain issues, particularly the fact that government owes so much to Unibank, and so why go in and shut down the bank? He thinks that we're not treating local indigenous businesses right.
To start with, that is a palpable falsehood. Government does not own, what do you call it, Unibank? 1 billion Ghana cedis. It's not true. Now, his assertion is based on the fact that there are some contractors or some entities who have done business with government and took loans from Unibank. To start with, most of these, or probably 95% or 99% of all these transactions or contracts took place under their watch. Now you would ask the question, how come that those contractors or those entities were not paid? As to that even being the reason why the bank had to be, bank has to have its license revoked, cannot be the case. Now, I didn't want to go into detail as to some of these things because I thought that we are going to respect the decision of the Dufours themselves to take the issue to court. But I'll give you just a plethora of things. Advances, apart from that, it's also clear, it's out there in the public domain, and it's not something that would be disputed, that the Bank of Ghana also actually gave a lot of money to Unibank for liquidity support, which ended up being used for all sorts of other things, right? So this is not even, so even if you want to discount the amount of money that was owed, for instance, and that people were, government was meant to pay these people, and then they will go on and pay Unibank and all of those things. And you try and compare that to the amount of support that the Bank of Ghana actually gave to Unibank. Right, that pales into insignificance, but that's not said. Listen, this is what some of the reports details that came out. Advances to shareholders. Unibank paid 3.7 billion Ghana cedis to shareholders under unusual credit terms, 1.13 billion of which were deliberately misrecorded under other assets, which was later transferred to loans and advances under unusual circumstances. Data capture. Unibank posted credits that were not backed by value to individual accounts as credits, which were then used for repayment of loans, totaling almost 1 billion cedis. Transfer entitles to 150 million Ghana cedis. Fixed deposits in the bank totaling 89 million Ghana cedis. For instance, there's a company called Numa, 438 million Ghana cedis. Holder Holdings, which actually incidentally belongs to the Dufels as well, 168 million Ghana cedis. Uni Securities, 89 million Ghana cedis. And Yao Ado Development, 87 million Ghana cedis. KPMG could not establish the bona fide commercial basis for this transaction. Of course, that's
okay.
fine.
So all these,
but
no
apart from
basis.
apart from that, related party expenses. The bank will second its staff to work with the various related entities, UniCredit, UniSecurities, UniPrecision, Holder, EIB, and continue to pay them without ever being paid back between August 2015 and April 2018. Excess service charge, corporate social responsibility money that were paid to IFS without board approval, unrecorded holder transaction, procurement from related parties totaling 57 million Ghana cedis, rental payments, property, several properties paid for by the bank and recorded in its assets register and were actually being used by other entities that were related to the bank, but had no correlation with what the bank was doing. Unisecurities obligation, APES fake account. All of these things are things that,
all these are captured in the KPMG report.
Yes, you see, these are things that, for me, that's why I'm saying that it's imperative that we have this conversation on the backdrop of the fact that it's going to court, and without trying to even judge the issues on the platform like this, right? And I can state categorically that this BOG governor has actually shown conviction. You see, he made some references to Sovereign and Beige and all of that, but you would recall that those banks really started their licensing applications way before the NPP came into government. Apart from that, you see, he deliberately moved away from issues to do with UT Bank and Capital Bank and all the other banks that were actually collapsed under their watch, but they refused to take any decisive measures to stop it. Listen, the 2014 report from the BOG under their watch, under Wampa and Isahaku, stated categorically the kind of things that was going on at UT, at Capital Bank and a few others that had to take this new governor to make a bold decision to stop, to prevent Ghanaian depositors from having their monies missing. To start with, these decisions were based on the fact that without being deliberate enough in your actions, it would have led to a financial meltdown. Look at the exposure. Listen, Unibank had 89% non-performing loans portfolio. 89%. And when they delve into it, majority of these were actually to people that were related to them or with friends and families and all of those things. Fair enough. Now that the issue has gone to court, the court will make that definite pronouncement. But as far as I'm concerned, to try to even make a certain assertion that there's some political undertones and all of those things, without being almost honest enough to state that the BOG as an institution, even under your watch, was when all of these things happened, and you refused, or there was absolutely no attempt whatsoever to deal with the issues. Listen, so the mere fact that you have an indigenous banks, we also have about another 20 or so indigenous banks who are doing well, right? So the mere fact that it's an indigenous bank does not mean that the very tenets, the foundation, the basics of banking and finance should be thrown to the dogs by virtue of the fact that it's an indigenous bank. Because you see, the point is that you have individuals. Now, I was happy that he mentioned that the taxpayers' money, or we have to use taxpayers' money to shore up, to make sure to prevent these depositors from losing their monies to start with. You understand? So if you're overexposed and you've used some of these banks, actually, not even in just relation to Unibank, were doing what they call misreporting, were doing fraudulent claims and doing all sorts of things, and it has come to the fore. And it turns out that when the depositor goes to the bank today and says that I want my money back, it will be a problem. Government has to step in.
Okay.
So for me, I don't even understand where this policy is. Who today, I'm asking Sammy, who, for instance, would the NDC as a political party be supporting? An individual who has had an opportunity to run a bank and run it aground, or the poor depositor who has his money there or his savings there, who has had his money used for all sorts of frivolous things. Okay. And I would want him to answer that.
Okay.
So for
I'll
me,
just submit to answer that.
Okay. So for me, this whole idea of trying to even bring some sort of political insinuations and also sort of things into it is neither here nor there. The truth of the matter is that their supervision, the way they pretended over this economy and the institution at the Bank of Ghana itself, and how these things have panned out, it's a clear indication of what they did. So I don't see how the person that has come in, right, who has shown the conviction, who is making this decision, we are hard decisions. In any case, the Bank of Ghana, even under their watch, they agree that, listen, these banks are probably a bit too small. So they actually went ahead to do this recapitalization drive to make sure that the minimum capital requirement is increased to 400 million Ghana cedis. And the reports and the reasons why they gave for that is there for everybody to see. But they did not even follow that through.
All right. Eric, I'm grateful. Sammy, just 2 minutes and then we can move on to another issue.
You see, Bright, we are dealing with the reputations of people. And so it is important for us to be factual in our assessments and to be fair to the facts.
So he raises some issues in the KPMG report.
Hold on. The KPMG report is a bogus report because in that report is the statement that the auditors does not seek to verify the claims and the statements which have been reduced, or the content of the report. The report has not been verified and authenticated.
So today,
and in that statement,
so today, Sammy JP actually
please hold on.
The fact that you can go out there and sully the reputations of people. And now you become the vanguard for.
Let's deal with
you allow him. I don't have a lot of time. I want us to touch on the 2 billion.
I'm actually surprised that.
I'm saying that number one, that report is an unverified.
So you don't even believe in their report?
No, I'm saying that it is not about me not believing in the report. I'm saying that report itself says that it is an unverified report, an inconclusive report, and a one-sided report. Because the side of the other side, the other side has not been incorporated in there. Neither did they seek to hear their position on the various claims they have made in the report. And so you cannot, in all honesty, on the basis of an inconclusive, one-sided, and an unverified report, castigate people like that and attack the reputations of people. So all the conclusions you are deriving from this report is neither here nor there, because the report in itself is not an accurate, conclusive.
It is one-sided.
That is one point. Now the second point I wish to make,
Eric, you please allow him.
The second point I wish to make is that, you see, government's indebtedness to Unibank and other banks is an incontestable fact, and the government itself has accepted that and has acknowledged its indebtedness to the banks. He
agrees, but says that the Bank of Ghana's liquidity support...
No, that liquidity support was provided to Unibank under the NDC regime by the Bank of Ghana. They've been paid. Liquidity support is not free money, it's like a loan. Unibank had already submitted proposals for the payment of that liquidity support. So it is different from the point I'm making.
In one breath, is a continuum. In another breath,
when you were speaking, I was here. Eric, don't do that. When you were speaking, I was here.
Allow him to speak.
So hold on. Well, the indebtedness we are talking about here has to do with monies owed Unibank by Cocoa Board, by Get Fund, by Road Fund, by government institutions and quasi-government institutions, and by local contractors. And with respect to the local contractors, the government of Ghana itself has issued, validated interim certificates in relation to this. So what we are saying is that you can choose not to pay them, but at least acknowledge that in your assessment of the assets and liabilities and the future prospects of the bank, which you didn't do, and we are saying that that was unfair and arbitrary. Now, number three.
Finally.
Number three, you see, when they eventually decided that the bank was insolvent, right, why didn't they give the shareholders of the bank the opportunity to recapitalize the bank, to inject additional capital into the bank? They were not even informed. Meanwhile, these shareholders have expressed their willingness to inject additional capital into the bank to save the bank. Now, in the face of that, it becomes unreasonable to expend the taxpayers' money in saving the bank when the shareholders themselves have expressed their willingness to inject additional capital in there. And now you see, he's speaking about politics and all that. Not too long ago, you were in opposition, specifically on the 6th of September 2016. The then running mate, Dr. Bawumia, organized a lecture under the theme, The Ghanaian Economy, a Foundation of Straw or Concrete. You remember that lecture? If you look at page 59 of the statement he read that day, Dr. Bawumia blamed the then NDC government for the mismanagement of the banking and financial sector. They blamed us for the supposed instability in the banking sector, and they promised that if elected, they were going to create a body called Financial Stabilization Council to bring stability in the financial and banking sector. Eric, you have been in government for 90 months. Where is the Financial Stabilization Council that Dr. Bawumia promised? Okay. Today you are telling us not to do politics with it when Dr. Bawumia was blaming us for the eventual collapse of 8 banks. Were you not doing politics with that? Your government is a bad omen for Ghanaian banks.
Can you answer Eric's final question? Yes. He said he wanted to know if you
the Dr. Addison one before. Yes, the Dr. Addison one. You see, it is a fact that the final banking license for Beach Finance Capital, Construction Bank, and Sovereign Bank were issued and signed by Dr. Addison in 2017. The bank was launched under this government, and an entourage from government headed by the Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, went there to launch the bank. Okay. And so, if today you are telling us that these banks acquired their licenses under false pretenses, you are the ones to be blamed. Stop collapsing indigenous banks. Stop, running private Ghanaians down, and stop promoting Nigerian and foreign banks at the detriment of the Ghanaians. That is not what we promised the people of this country.
Gentlemen, I'm grateful, but let's quickly touch on Madam Otiko Jabe's decision not to pick up that ambassadorial position. It is too... she says she's bound out of politics. It's a story that I guess you well know. Because I don't have a lot of time, you know by now that the ex-minister says she's no longer going to be in active politics. She has turned down the decision to go to Italy to become Ghana's ambassador to that country. Eric, now, this, for some, it's strange. Do you see it as strange too?
Not at all. Well, to even start with, as far as I'm concerned, as of this morning, there's no official communication from Madam Otiko Jaba to government that she has decided not to take up the
so it's not official
nomination. So that I can't speak to. But again, I can state that Madam Otiko Jaba has served this party very well. She served the people of this country very well. She served the government very well. And if she makes a decision that she wants to bow out of active party politics, I think that that decision should be respected. I would probably even support the idea that if well and truly that is a decision that she's taking. And I've heard in certain quarters that she has alluded to some family responsibilities, and that's the reason why she feels that she wants to stay out of active party politics. I mean, I think that we need to respect that particular decision. Of course, there's going to be all sort of insinuations and people will make certain allusions, but as far as I'm concerned, once we don't have the full statement or an official statement coming from her, let's leave it as it is. Of course, the president saw that she had some expertise and competences and experience to play a role as an ambassador, and that is the reason why the president made the decision to nominate her for that particular position. But if, again, she, in her own way, decides that it's time to call it a day in active politics, it's a decision, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not a big issue.
Should the presidency convince her to come back if it gets officially there?
Well, I mean, that would be the prerogative of the president. But, I mean, if somebody expresses such a strong conviction that I've quit and it makes it public, and that, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, there's no official communication to the presidency. And I would expect that as an individual, the president would consider her wishes.
So Madam Otiko does not feel she's been given a raw deal?
Well,
she's been demoted, as is the perception around her?
I can't speak for her, so I can't state categorically what her state of mind is in terms of what has transpired. But what I can say in general terms is that, I mean, in this particular game we call politics or even governance, I mean, all sorts of things happen, all sorts of manner of things happen. And you serve at the mercy or basically at the prerogative of the pleasure of the president. And the president has the sole right to decide who plays a role in his government or not. So that, for me, I think that everybody, regardless of your stature or the way how you feel that you've contributed to any political cause or whatever, should have an appreciation of. But I mean, this whole talk about demotion and all that, it's neither here nor there. I mean,
I'm coming to you, Sammy. Before Sammy comes in, the way she did this thing, speaking to the media house, instead of perhaps informing the presidency to be communicated to the public, right or wrong?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that I don't speak for her. I mean, I think that decision, that sort of conclusion can be drawn by everybody. Right. But I'm not here to speculate or to conjecture the state of mind or why she has done so. But I'm saying that, as far as I'm concerned, and with the reasons that has been alluded to in terms of why she wants to take a backseat from active politics, I believe strongly that should be respected. And again, I would commend her for the job that she's done. She's been women organizer for 2 conservative tenures. She's been a minister in opposition, a parliamentary candidate. She was a strong advocate for the party, women, children, a communicator. She has played an extremely significant role, and it's not something that can be discounted. But again, it's a personal decision.
I'm grateful. Sammy, so that's it. I mean, he is suggesting that he can't read into the minister's head to know what some of the things that he didn't know, whether right or wrong. But what do you think?
Right. First of all, you see, this issue exposes the super incompetence of President Akufo-Addo and the leadership failure that we are having on our hands as far as this government is concerned.
Right. I think sometimes
will you allow me?
You don't have to allow some of these things, because I could have said far worse things. But
far worse things about
on a platform like this.
No, please, I think you should have your time. You keep on interjecting me anytime. I attempt to make my submission, and that is not fair.
That is his view.
Please, I am saying that the circumstances surrounding this issue exposes the super incompetence and the leadership failure in this government. You see, what it shows is that the president did not consult Madam Otiko Jabbar in appointing her as ambassador of Italy.
An allegation.
It's not an allegation, because I have read the interview between Madam Otiko Jabbar and the Daily Graphic. And in that interview, the woman makes it clear that she's unwilling to go to Italy and work as Ghana's ambassador to Italy, and that her opinions has not been sought by the president, And so clearly that shows that she was not consulted, and her willingness to accept that new role was not sought by the president. You see, how do you appoint somebody, how do you give somebody such a responsibility without first finding out from the person, so whether the person is willing to accept it or not? Why do you embarrass your government in this way? Yes, you have the prerogative to hire and fire, but in appointing somebody, it behoves on you to first of all discuss it with the person. And that was not done in this case, and I think that is very bizarre. That is very embarrassing for government. That aside, I'm very indifferent about this matter. I am not one of those who would want to gloat over the woes of Otiku Jaba because it doesn't put food on the table and it doesn't resolve the concrete problems facing the Ghanaian. On the other hand, too, I'm not one of those who feel sympathy for her because her vituperations and insults against the person of the former president are still very fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I will continue to remember her.
Is insulting everybody in your party.
I will continue to remember her in very negative light, and I hope she learns her lessons that President Akufo-Addo is not worth dying for. Clearly, she's been used and dumped. The reasons she's giving for her decision to quit politics is not the truth and cannot be the real decision, real reasons behind her decisions. Clearly, the lady feels used and dumped. She was used for the hatchet jaws of President Akufo-Addo, used to insult, you know, a senior statesman like John Mahama and all that. And today she feels that she's being treated unfairly. I wish her well. I think that it is well within her rights to decide whether to continue in politics or to bow out. But she should spare us all those excuses of she quitting politics to go and take care of her ex-husband. In any case, her ex-husband didn't fall sick yesterday. We are talking of a man who has been sick for the past 6 years. And even though that the man has been sick for the past 6 years, she's been going about her duties as a politician, as a minister of state and all that. So clearly that reason is contrite. She's been used and dumped. She feels, you know, neglected. She feels disappointed. Right. She feels that President Akufo-Addo is not worth dying for, and that is why she's decided to bow out of politics. We can only wish her well and respect her decision. But somebody just reminded me that I didn't answer Eric's question to me. So just before we finish, I want to tell him that Kwamina Duffuor is a renowned Ghanaian economist who should be celebrated. And young people like us should not use opportunities like this to run down statesmen, people who have contributed to the development of this country. Because you told me that will I rather celebrate somebody who has run down a bank, you know, and not rather support this incompetent decision of the Bank of Ghana and the government of Ghana to run down indigenous banks. Kwamina Duffuor has contributed his quota to the development of this country. Right. His record is impeccable, and we must stand with him. We must celebrate him in these difficult times.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful. He's a member of the NDC team running for communications.
I do. Really? I didn't want to mention.
We are talking about the Ghanaians.
He thinks that supporting local indigenous Ghanaians is quite
absolutely no qualms in supporting indigenous Ghanaian businesses, indigenous Ghanaian banks. But I feel that we also live in a day and age where we also have to go and stand by global standards for any Ghanaian entity to be able to get to the top, to be able to become a class act in terms
and so
of
you must always hear the other side.
We should be able to say that, listen, this is a benchmark, this is a yardstick, this is what a global modern day organization should look like. I have absolutely no problem with that. But I also don't back this idea that some corners needs to be cut, that you need to bend over backwards. You need to actually sit down for people to perpetuate some kind of illegality by virtue of being Ghanaian.
What illegality?
When people commit illegality,
I'm just saying. When people commit illegality, what you do is that you prosecute them. You don't persecute them in the media. This media trial of Ghanaians.
But you have done far worse.
No. Enrique, you're not saying because you've done
rationalizing.
I don't want to say that.
Sitting here today,
okay, I'm grateful, gentlemen, for your time.
I haven't done anything.
Eric Wakuchum is a member of the MPP's team. Sami Gyamfi is a member of the NDC team. He's running for National Communications Officer. Gentlemen, grateful for your Wednesday morning.
You didn't even say that. That was nice to hear.
Oh yeah, you were. All right, stay here. The response coming up right after this.